Hi, I'm Candace Felice. In this Community Life in Northeast Georgia featured podcast, known for his poignant storytelling, award-winning Native documentary filmmaker Stephen Heape chronicles his latest film, Don't Get Sick After June. The film is narrated by Peter Coyote as Native elders, other Native peoples, along with medical experts, discuss the continuing decline of Native American health care due to a federal budget shortfall. In a recent phone conversation, I spoke with Heape from his home in Dallas, Texas, about the film.
Stephen, you have had so much success with all of your documentaries, and to add to that number of successes, you've just released your latest, Don't Get Sick After June, an American Indian Healthcare. Why did you decide on this topic for your next film?
Well, Candace, first of all, it's a pleasure to speak with you today from Dallas, Texas. Don't Get Sick After June, American Indian Healthcare really originated as a project that we wanted to do on type 2 diabetes and obesity in Indian country, specifically with children. And the more we got into it and did interview after interview and kept reading the press and the awareness factor that was out there and really not seeing that it's making a whole lot of difference, I thought the key factor here to cure is lifestyle change. And seeing how that the greater part of the population finds it very difficult for lifestyle change, I began thinking, what is the system going to be like? What is IHS? How are they going to handle the tsunami of medical needs that Indian country is going to have in another 10 to 15 years or within the next generation? And we began to focus more on the capabilities and what Native Americans have at stake here. And the more we got into it and we started from the history, the beginning of healthcare being taken over by the War Department in the early 1800s. And typically it was to take care of the soldiers at outlying forts. Indians were an afterthought. So that brought us up to, the 50s and when it was turned over to the federal health care system, then into what is today IHS. But we just kept reading and seeing all the information about the yearly deficit, the budget for Indian health care really runs out after June. So that's where the phrase comes, don't get sick after June, because typically you can't get treated. So we just felt that this was truly a story in Indian health care that needed to be told and really told outside of Indian country.
So what you're saying is each calendar June, there is no monies left for Indian health care?
There's no monies. And we've been reading a lot about the Health Care Act and Obama's Health Care Act and the increase in budget for Indian health care, which was a whopping 6%. Well, everybody was very grateful in Indian country for that. But, when you put the pencil to it and you see a 6% increase really is covering a 50% deficit, doesn't it just mean you're still in a 44% deficit and you're just going to run out of money, maybe a couple of weeks later? So to me, that was kind of a Band-Aid on a shotgun. What we really need is recognition that this is a obligation by the federal government to American Indians that was ceded for their land, for their right. Basically, they gave up their way of life, and they were promised health care, education, housing, and I think most people should know that this has been a real shortfall. The federal government has really not lived up to this obligation.
Why do you think that is, Stephen?
Well, it always comes down to what everyone says is lack of funds. My perception is that it's more of lack of interest. I think it was mandatory for every congressman and senator or legislators to have to put themselves and their family dependent on the Indian healthcare system for their well-being. You're going to see radical changes in a very short period of time. They're going to just see how much grief this does cause in a already traumatized, race of people.
Do you find that there's more of a disparity with some Native peoples than with others? As you were doing this documentary, you did chronicle from, again, going back to the earliest time when the necessities of food, clothing, and shelter were prominent for Native peoples, and it was the diet that they were given that added to what we see here today as a diabetic and a cardiac epidemic among Native peoples.
Yeah, and that really is the direct result of the Commodities Act in the early 1930s that was created to supplement the farm ranchers during the Great Depression. Ironically, the government thought, well, instead of just throwing all this stuff into a landfill, we just might as well go put it on the reservations. And that is really what threw the native diet for a loop when they're eating canned beef and applesauce and really things that were very unhealthy. And that has changed today, but not as dramatically as it should be. Again, it all comes down to lifestyle change. But to answer your question about the tribes that we talked with in this project, we went from both ends of the spectrum. We were down in Pine Ridge at the Ogallala Sioux Reservation documenting their dramatic needs for health care and clinics. And then we went to the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma and highlighted and visited their new clinic, the Three Rivers Clinic, which is just state-of-the-art for health care.
So you're seeing some progress coming about, but is it pretty much from the peoples themselves that are changing their futures and their children's?
Well, I'll tell you what is really making the change that I have seen has been the influx and the power that casino gaming has given some of the tribes. Of course, not all tribes are gaming tribes, although a lot of people don't understand that. Out of our 560 some odd federally recognized tribes, we have maybe 150 or 160 that are gaming tribes. And these are the tribes that are able to use their newly found resources to supplement what the federal government has been so lacking on for decades. Cherokee Nation, for example, that large portion of that facility was paid for with gaming income, just like the Navajos now with their new casinos are built back into their infrastructure and build up their education, housing, and welfare programs. So I think that gaming has really empowered a number of tribes. I know you're going to have a controversy on that from both sides of the fence, but from my perspective, I think that it really empowered a lot of these tribes to do good things for themselves.
Stephen, let's take a break here and listen to a short clip from your documentary film, Don't Get Sick After June, American Indian Healthcare.
This is what my people care about. This is our mother, the earth. It's not just a place, she's alive. We're standing on her. We're part of her. Feel her breathe. Think about the day. Listen to the earth. The earth is here forever, but it will only be exactly like this on one day. Today.
The IHS is not a welfare service. It's an obligation by treaty of the federal government to the Native Americans for land ceded in so many treaties over the last several hundred years. The obligations have never been met in full, and the health of American Indians is at an all-time low and continues to diminish. American Indians have been under siege since first contact with the Europeans in 1492. The invaders brought alien things to their continent: greed, possession of land, and weapons of mass destruction, especially disease. Among them were gifts of blankets woven with smallpox, alcohol to escape the pain and replace the spirituality the invaders tried to kill. They took their land on trails of broken treaties, trails of tears, and trails of broken hearts. Though never voiced, never outright viewed as such, the consequence was genocide.
You've also, in this new film, as in all your films, you get such wonderful names to be the narrators of your documentaries, and this time you have
Peter Coyote. In fact, I was just reading this morning that PBS, Peter Coyote did all of the episodes of Ken Burns National Park series, which is airing, I think, again next week on PBS. And, most people don't realize that he did that. But, yeah, he brings so much to it because he is such an advocate for American Indians and has been for the past 40 or 50 years. We also have August Schulenberg, for people that don't know, was the star of Sitting Bull and Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, the HBO production. And August does spiritual readings throughout the film from Kent Nurburn's book, Wolf at Twilight, An Indian Elder's Journey. So it really kind of ties it in nice. There's very poignant and important things that is said.
Just seeing time after time, Stephen, the quality, the technique that you use in producing each documentary, you put the project first and your message is always clear, and it's not biased, although some people may think, well, when you're doing a documentary, it's biased. But you're presenting the facts in a way in which all Americans can take it in and understand that there are still some unspoken, unresolved issues with Native peoples that are going on.
Yeah, and we really produced this to kind of mark it as a footprint in time as far as where we are now that the new Health Care Act has been signed into law. What is this going to be like in another 25 or 50 years? And I say this because in our research, finding information and finding documentation on Native American subject matter is very, very difficult, just because obviously the history is written by the victors. But we hope that this will be around where people can go back that are maybe making a documentary on Indian health care in 100 years, and they can go back and say, you know what, 100 years ago, President Obama signed this act, and this is where the Indians were, and they were in a pretty tough place. And it is described, and we know that because it's in this film. I just hope that can be used as a barometer to set the pace to do better. That's the only thing I can see. We can't go much in the other direction.
Where can people actually view your documentary? Will it be on one of the public stations or on the History Channel?
We want as many people to see this as possible, and I'll tell you, Candace, it's really amazing that it seems like our films have a much more interest in international broadcasts than domestically. It just really surprises me. I don't know if it's because programmers think that our general public doesn't really care about Native American issues, and if they are Native American issues, then they feel the Native Americans be aware of them, so, they kind of get pushed back. But we have great interest in Japan and in Europe, Brazil. In fact, the Trail of Tears Cherokee Legacy will be airing in Brazil, I think, starting next month.
I know that to be true, Stephen. I, too, have been amazed at the global response to wanting to know more about Native peoples. I think the personal voice that comes across is something that maybe people, because Native peoples are so private, maybe they think that, well, there's really nothing that I should know that I can't learn from history books. But as you said, history is written by the conquerors. So to truly get the whole story, as Paul Harvey used to always say, it's good to get it from the people who actually lived through it.
Again, it's a story that I think should be seen. We have sent it in to Senator Dorkin, who is heading the congressional hearings on the IHS and getting ready to hand out some subpoenas regarding the Aberdeen regional office and some goings-on there. So it'll be interesting to see just what kind of play and what kind of reception it gets. But so far, the reviews that we've had in News from Indian Country and Indian Country Today, the Indian press has been very kind to it, saying that it's something that needs to be seen widely and exposed about this obligation that the United States has yet to meet to America's first people. And also, over and above the Film Festival, Candace, the film is available in retail now, and if it's not, you can ask your favorite retailer to get it because it's available through our major distributors, and also at our website at www.richheape.com, or they can just Google Rich Heape, or they can Google Don't Get Sick After June, American Indian Healthcare.
Stephen, as always, it's such a pleasure talking to you, and I thank you that you're so gracious each year to bring to our awareness what's going on in Native people's homelands and in what's going on in their personal lives. As a part of Native History Month, I've been speaking with Stephen Heape of Rich Heape Films Incorporated out of Dallas, Texas. His new film, Don't Get Sick After June, an American Indian Healthcare Circle of Life series is available, as he said, by going to richheapefilms.com. Stephen, I wish you much success, and I can't wait to see your next film.
Thank you, Candace. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
We hope you've enjoyed this Community Life in Northeast Georgia featured podcast brought to you by WPPR Demarest, a Georgia Public and NPR affiliate radio station from the Piedmont College Demarest campus in the Swanson Center complex on 88.3 FM. To contact us, email wppr@piedmont.edu. And if you'd like to know more about local life and events in Northeast Georgia, join in on the conversation at Facebook at WPPR Demarest. I'm Candace Felice.